Good morning, everybody. I'm Chair Barry Bialik, and I would like to welcome you to the November 4th, 2021 Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. We're streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on our committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen in and comment live by phone. Please dial 855-925-2801 and use meeting code 7663 to listen in. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. I'll go through and introduce the committee members who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. When you have a question or would like to speak, unmute your microphone. Please remember to mute your phone, which is option *6 after you are done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Okay. I'm here, Scott Adams.
Morning, Scott Adams, urban planner with Land of Sky Regional Council.
Is Dewana Little here? Let's see here, Paul Heathman.
Good morning, this is Paul Heathman, AVP Mortgage Loan Officer, Home Trust Bank.
Margie
Bukowski, Weaver Cook Construction.
Brian.
Good morning, I'm Brian Methvin.
Joe. Chris Day.
Good morning, I'm Chris Day with Civil Design Concepts, local civil engineer.
Brandy.
Good morning, Brandy Woodard, Asheville Housing Authority.
Sakia. Babs.
Good morning, Babs Phillip.
Good morning, Babs. And Andy.
Good morning.
Okay, good. We're good to go. So approval of our minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look through our October minutes? Any questions on them? One thing I did see, I think I just wanted to clarify, I don't have it in front of me. Someone could pull it up. There's, I believe there was some talk about Oak Hill, and I think it mentioned it's something tied in with the reparations, that one might be on hold. I just want to clarify that that one's not. Sorry, I don't have our minutes in front of us. Let me pull it up.
Barry, you wanted me to chat about that now or in community development updates?
Well, if we need to correct it in the minutes or not.
Yeah, I don't believe that Oak Hill has been set aside for reparations. Nikki's on this call as well. So hi, everybody. Paul D'Angelo with Community and Economic Development. And Nikki Reed, our interim CED director, is also available. Nikki, is that is being held for reparations, Oak Hill, or is that an available site for potential affordable housing development?
So the moratorium around urban renewal properties was based upon those parcels that came to the city's ownership through urban renewal programs in our city's history. And so we did a research project that identified those properties and we mapped them out. That's available online. And so that was how we designated what parcels are under that urban renewal moratorium. Oak Hill is not included in a historically urban renewal area and therefore is not part of that moratorium.
Okay. That's what I thought. I'm just trying to, sorry, I'm pulling up our minutes just to see what I read. Okay, there's a line that says land banking. Oh, it just says, I see, land banking has been put on hold for the Oak Hill project towards affordable housing until reparations have been addressed.
So that's that is not correct. So land banking dollars aren't on hold for any particular project, and Oak Hill, we continue to get inquiries about the redevelopment of that land. So we can correct that in the minutes.
Okay, yeah, that's the only thing I saw in there. Like I think, yeah, it's just confused from the different things we're talking about. So we can just strike that. All right. So with that stricken, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'd move to approve them.
Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? If everyone will raise their hands.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. That's approved.
Thanks for catching that, Barry. We appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. No problem. All right. Community development updates. So these are the updates from October 19th. Anything you want to bring specific attention to? Or you want to just see if there's questions from the members, Paul?
Just a couple things from us. I appreciate you kind of shouting out to the team members behind the scenes, Barry. So thanks for that. Just in that roll call right before we went live, community development is currently a team of 10. So thanks for that. I did want to share that we actually have added to our community development website. I think for anyone who's been on our website, we've updated all of our tabs except for just the HUD programs, which I think is the last one to go. We'll get to that. That's a bit more complicated with community development, block grant funding, and home funding. So City of Asheville Community Development, and it should come up. The affordable housing tab in particular is updated with resources for the community, as well as developer investment tools for developers interested in partnering with the City of Asheville. We've shared that out. It's been a huge help to, I'll go on camera here, a huge help to our team in sharing out that information. Recently, we added another tab about the lot of efforts around homelessness, and we've added a tab just as a resource for community members who want to be a part of the solution on homelessness, a very difficult topic, as you all can imagine, a difficult issue. And so it's avenues to learn more, to be a part of the solution, but also an avenue for citizens who may have concerns. And we, working in partnership, have been able to create a website that basically can address most situations. And hopefully everyone will find that helpful. It's asheville.nc, asheville.nc.gov/end homelessness. And we have some just general resources there. And hopefully that will be another informative area to send folks to be a part of the solution, learn more, address concerns. So all in our commitment in just being more organized and more forthcoming in our tools to everybody. So really happy to have that out. We will probably report on this next month, but just a brief that over the last, since COVID, I think we've pushed almost $16 million out the door, over almost 500 draw requests, and over 100 contracts. So the team is working hard, and always more to do. So Barry, you and I have talked about that, like what those figures look like. So just a brief there. And then the other thing would be something that we're adding to the website as a resource, which is our affordable housing calculator. So I think most of this group is familiar with our Appendix 1, which is about rental prices and how to work with us when it comes to affordable rents when you partner with a city. We also have Appendix 2, so aptly named, for home prices, and talks a little bit about that. So we've had this idea about an affordable housing calculator. Christina Harris, who is our community development coordinator, has kind of taken this project on and just wants to share it with you all, just to kind of give you a quick brief of what that will look like. So what that means is folks in the community can input a couple pieces of data and figure out if it's affordable to them or not. And Christina, I will let you go ahead and share your screen if you'd like, but big kudos to Christina for grabbing this project and taking it forward. And we just wanted to share it with you all. I think we had one question, and then we can, that's mostly for my updates that I can think of right now of stuff that's happening.
Okay.
Before we go to Christina, Margie?
I know that I'm have read all the updates, but I wondered if you could give us a more detailed update on 319 Biltmore, because we're running a little bit out of time, and that November 2023 is just a couple years from now. It takes at least 2 years to build something there. So can you give me more of a timeline?
Sure. So I think Nikki and Nikki Reed, our department director, pardon me, might be sharing a bond update to HCD in November or December as we're moving along with the bond funds. And actually, that is looking pretty well. But regarding 319, I still think that there's some conversations happening with city management and city council to kind of move that project off home plate. And I think more will come soon on that project.
Yeah, I'm just concerned because there is literally, you have until November of 2023, if I'm not correct. Correct. Is that right?
Basically October of 2023. Yes, Margie. And we are, hear you on that. And hopefully more to report soon on that. Our affordable housing bond dollars went into the purchase of that land. And then, obviously in partnership, how does that land subsidy work for the affordable housing we're looking for at 319? But more soon, Margie.
Okay, thanks.
Will that be, I think, on HCD's agenda for November? I know it was kind of coming really close last month and hasn't been sewed up yet. You think it'll be on this agenda?
I don't know if we necessarily have to go back to HCD. I think we're just looking for about that. I think it'll be talked about in the aspect of the bond dashboard, Barry. But I think what we're just waiting for kind of a final thumbs up from second floor city management, city council to proceed.
Okay. Andy?
Will that bond dashboard presentation come to us before it goes to HCD?
I don't believe so. We will take what we bring in November or December and bring it back to y'all in that following meeting.
Doesn't it make more sense to do it in the other order? Since we're the advisory committee, wouldn't it make more sense to bring it here, have community discussion about it, and then take it to the council committee? Otherwise, it just feels like things get backwards in the process, and we're hearing about things after they've already been presented to council.
So I can try to get
committees.
Absolutely. I can get clarity on that from the board folks about these roles. HCD specifically has been talking about a bond update. And I know Barry has been in communications about, what exactly we should be bringing to AHAC before it goes to HCD. And so hopefully we can get more clarity on that. And so that you all feel comfortable that we're sharing information in a way, not just policy, but things that y'all want to look at. But I have been asking for direction from boards and commissions on that. And I know, Barry, I know that there was supposed to be a conversation with Kathy Ball at some point as well about understanding exactly what happens when and chicken egg type of thing.
Yeah, I've been asking for that dashboard kind of report on the bond spending in this committee for a while now too. And we were tracking that really closely pre-COVID when y'all put that bond dashboard presentation together first, and we're really involved in what that looked like. And I don't know, I think there's still room for this group to give input on that.
I'll keep that.
We'll take that, Andy.
Yeah, and I'll work on that, Andy. I'm obviously, as y'all know, we're working on trying to keep our committee's foot in the door before it closes for things like it's been specifically about the housing trust fund and the Luigi thing. So I'll add kind of that bond dashboard to the foot in the door. So yeah, I mean, I know there's lots of discussion on 319, so maybe we'll see something that and I think with some of that stuff, Andy, that we've been trying as a committee to get some clarification. I think with some of the turnover happening at the city with with Kathy leaving, and then with I think it's been discussed. So and I've asked to be on the HCD agenda on it, and then there's been talk from that of there being a setting up a kind of an affordable housing summit that council and us would be involved in. I think that was kind of what I was shared with what would be an option, and then some of this stuff can get hashed out, and I just it takes time for them to plan that, but that was something that was suggested. So I'll keep you updated. Any other questions on updates? Because I think there's a few of those specific kind of updates we've got later on our agenda that we can go into a deeper dive on, specifically the fee rebates, down payment assistance, and penalties, for the housing trust fund and fee rebates. We want to leave that for later. We'll leave that late for the later in the conversation where it's on the agenda, even though those are kind of related to the community development updates. Andy?
Just one other thing on the updates, and that is any movement on the Cedar Hill purpose-built communities discussion. Seems like that's been kind of at the same status for the last several months.
Yes, and it is still kind of with those discussions between city management and the potential partners at Cedar Hill and the Deep Review site. I still think there's some discussions happening, and they are around, an agreement to come out of that about what that potential rebuild could look like in a framework. And then, of course, the importance of getting out to the community to see exactly what the community is looking like. But I think right now, the discussions continue between the potential partners and city management on the guardrails and the framework around that development. It has been going on for a few months, and hopefully more to produce on that soon as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm concerned about with that, or not concerned about, but want to flag is the with the county's exploration of developing their Ferry Road site. You could have two really large publicly owned residential developments, kind of residential master plan community developments, happening at more or less the same time, based on what the planning timeline is looking like. And I think it's just important to be aware of, the potential. Maybe that brings some synergy. Maybe it brings one, giant developer to town that could help with both of those projects, but they could land, more or less at the same time, or their planning processes could be, and aligning funding and all of that. It's just something to keep an eye on.
I appreciate that, Andy, and absolutely, lots happening and potential happenings around there and what that looks like. And so again, hopefully we can provide more of an update once we hear more about how those discussions are going.
Paul, I just wanted to add to that is that timing is really important in here, because that Asheville Housing Authority will probably do a 9% or a HUD. It would be a HUD deal, and they have to turn all that stuff in January. And then you don't know until August if everything has gone through, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of preparation to get everything ready to turn in January, and if that's going to happen. So just something to keep in mind, that some of these federal programs are very lengthy and take a lot of preparation.
Absolutely, Margie, and I appreciate that again. And these reminder factors are all good. We keep a close knit with those timelines, with 9% and 4%, and how all of that works. And yeah, I don't anticipate anything being turned in January, as far as I know, this year. I know there's got to be, I would imagine, community discussions. I don't want to speak for the Housing Authority by any means, but yes, those timelines matter, and in these conversations, and that has been discussed about what makes the most sense in those partnerships.
Okay. Is Pineview, I know that was one that's been discussed about coming to HCD. Is there any updated proposals yet, or is that still in works?
So we've been in contact with the Pineview folks almost weekly about how they're trying to pivot to a different site. The issue that we're struggling right now, probably like most developers here, is, part of our work with Housing Trust Fund is to fund things that are as shovel ready as possible. Working with that partner, it seems like they won't be able to move dirt, on this pivot for potentially 6 to 9 months, and so it's becoming a conversation on how to best do that if we pivot to another site, but then there's still no movement, and how do we shorten that timeline, as that award's been out there for a year. Of course, it's COVID times, rising prices, across the board, labor shortage. And so as a smaller infill developer, they might be struggling a bit more than others with some of those overreaching affordable housing issues. But we're in contact with them to try to see if there's a best way to move forward on this pivoted project, or should they rescind the award for now and let's come back to the drawing board. Again, repeating myself, a housing trust fund is supposed to go to projects that are basically shovel ready within 3 to 4 months, and it seems like lately, because of COVID times and the challenges in the industry, that is taking much longer.
Okay, and then so Restaurant Court is, I think I shared with some of you the property is listed for sale now. Has there been any further discussion from the developer if they're pursuing? I know they had an application that was kind of pulled, and is it kind of on hold? Has there been any discussion of the past month?
We have not heard back from the developer about wanting to come back for that parcel for affordable housing at the moment. We've not heard back.
Okay, because that's when we do have funds allocated for, right? Yep.
I know we have initial funds, and then they were coming back for additional funds, so that's correct.
Okay, yeah, I just checked. It's still active on the market, so it's not under contract yet, but it is for sale.
2 projects that we could potentially see housing trust fund dollars come back into the pot, and moving housing trust fund dollars has been challenging for sure. Most of that money is usually for local infill developers, and I think that there's been a struggle there. We'll have an update on those figures. If I understand correctly, from a bond perspective, I think of the $5 million that went into trust fund, only about $800,000 are still left in that are bond dollars. And again, that would be part of our bond dashboard update. We just need a bit of time to finish putting that together.
Got it. Okay. Anyone else have any questions on updates? Good. So I do want to, just acknowledge, I did see Joe has joined, as well as Councilwoman Mosley. So I just want to welcome them as well. And then I also want to take, just a quick moment as we finish these updates, just to relate to through the COVID time. It's definitely been challenging, and a lot of us haven't seen each other in almost 2 years physically. So, but I would like to really thank the community development team, especially Paul, Paul's leadership in particular of the team, as it's grown and has operated more efficiently than I've seen it, operate in my, with 4 different directors. So I just wanted to, thank his team. I think you said you have 9 people. It's Jonathan, Christina, Nancy, Mary Brooke, Megan, Brian, Emily, Alex, and Laura. So I just want to really want to thank them. And then thank you, Nikki, for, all that you've done to kind of steer all this through all these challenges. We really appreciate it. It's an important mission for the city, as we know. So going along the lines with how important the mission is of affordable housing, I'd really like, one of the things, in the conversations I have, I understand how much work this is and how overworked some of the staff is, that I'd really like for us as a committee to make a recommendation that the city hire an affordable housing director that specifically is targeted to just overlook the affordable housing program. That way it really helps to interface with the other parts, the other departments that rely on it, such as, development services. It's almost like an ombudsman or someone who really helps carry through affordable housing from the developers calling in to all the, the different financing and funding stages to then actually to the construction of it, interfacing with planning and development services. There was talk in the past of creating kind of development services kind of position that would be a liaison for that. And I think that, just with their staffing hasn't happened. But I would really like, knowing how the community development team has grown and staff has grown, I would really like to see a designated position for affordable housing director. I think other cities the same size certainly have that. And I'd really like to make a recommendation, that HCD and the city consider, hiring an affordable housing director. Is any, I know I'm kind of bringing this in at a strange time, but, I wanted to just kind of share that with the committee and see if everyone's in favor of that. And if so, we can just make a quick motion to recommend to HCD that they really explore the idea of hiring creating and hiring an affordable housing director.
I agree with you, Gary. I think it's a great idea. I think it's somebody, that has the background, that knows, has a good background in what affordable housing is and understands all the complexities of it, because it certainly isn't a simple topic.
I wonder if we could get Paul and Nikki's take on that proposal.
Nikki?
Thanks, Brian. I mean, I'm here to, I really want to listen. I think, especially thinking through, I mean, I hear I'm just thinking about like all the work that we do now and the work that Paul does. So I really want to listen and better understand how the committee sees that. I'm just not quite familiar with what the interface is between advisory committees and like personnel decisions. So I'm really more of in a listening mode because I'm not quite familiar with that. I mean, I know that we are upcoming on our budget process. And so that budget process is typical when we talk about allocation of resources. And so I am hearing that certainly we need to understand what resources that we need, human resources as well as financial, of course, in serving the mission of affordable housing. So I'm kind of listening with that in mind, as well as just trying to better understand that relationship between personnel and committee. But again, I think I understand where this is coming from, and I appreciate that we are about to embark upon that budget process and how the advocacy for resources for the department and for the mission is something that we need to be cognizant of.
Yeah, we can. I mean, it's like a recommendation. We could. I mean, I guess we could. Our options. We could make a motion, or we could just say, bring this up and say we'll put this on our agenda for next time to kind of help flesh this out. But I think it's as we hit different crossroads levels, and as they come up all the time. I think it's definitely something we've learned that we see could be valuable. Andy?
I wonder, to avoid the potential overreach of what this committee can do, but still accomplish the same thing that where you're going, Barry, is that, maybe we could make our recommendation slightly less prescriptive and say we'd like we'd encourage city management to look at elevating the role of affordable housing at the staff level and investing adequately in the capacity of the teams tasked with affordable housing, delivering affordable housing in Asheville or something like that, so that we have. I don't want to micromanage the city management staff. It's really their job to figure out what the right way is to create their leadership structure. But I agree, it's such a big issue. It could stand to be elevated, so that there's fewer layers of decision makers to move through to advance affordable housing goals. And I do think we could make a bigger investment in the staff capacity.
Barry, are you recommending like an affordable housing czar? Because I
sort of, yeah. I mean, that's what it's and again, maybe what our way we do this is we just put this, I'm just introducing this now because there's some timeliness to it, and maybe what we do is we put it on our next agenda that we can then clarify. Yeah, it's like we're not saying city hire this, but we as an advisory committee, can say, hey, to definitely help the mission of affordable housing, we could definitely use someone whose role is targeted specifically for that, because, I know the role of the team, the role of the department gets split with, they have so many demands and so much pressure. And that it is then really hard to kind of help do some of that ombudsman and connecting that the projects connect through with all that's promised, So that's what I can go either way, but I just definitely want to introduce this conversation. And again, there's some timeliness to it. So I'd like to definitely introduce a conversation, whether it's, something we we discuss further now, or we just put it on the agenda item for next time that we can clarify. Paul Heathman.
Yeah, thanks. I think, this is an introduction of an idea to me, so I don't really know what that would fully mean to have someone in that role. But when I think about our city's challenges, this is very near the top. And I do feel like it doesn't get enough attention. And our lack of focus on it is changing without our ability to help it. It's changing our city. And I love the idea that this may put a seat at the table more often and have someone really focusing on it, because we're going to run out of time on this issue. Like, there will be a time where it sort of feels like it's already slipping away. So I think I need to learn more about what that role would be to really sort of like weigh in on it. But it feels like something that really, really makes sense just here on the surface. If we have enough time, to put this on the agenda and try to learn exactly what that role would be in the next meeting, if there's enough time for that, for us to kind of talk about that, then make a recommendation and that be ahead of these budget decisions that are upcoming, then that's exactly what I think we should do.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, what we'll do is we can just compile, especially if we compile some job descriptions. I mean, just of like what other affordable housing directors in similar sized cities do. And that way we have something just to say, well, this is kind of what our department does. I think one of the things that was kind of, one of our task force meetings, our build task force came up, which was, one of the things that's promised as an incentive for affordable housing projects is basically priority review at development services. And then, I was kind of shocked when I learned Chris Day, who shepherds some of those programs through on the engineering side, didn't even know that it existed, because it's one of those little things that we promise that then if it doesn't make it to the next department, then they don't know that they're supposed to do that, or they don't have the flag mechanism. So I thought, like, someone who stays involved in the project, from like helping to find the funding and the mission and the land, to then, make sure that it's the promises that were made are actually kept on all the departments. But yeah, I think this is a big topic, and that's what I would be happy to kind of put it on our next agenda, and we can do a little bit of background research of what other affordable housing directors do. One of my, similar size city, one of my college friends, his wife is the affordable housing director for Santa Fe, New Mexico. And so I followed her career, I kind of followed her career. She's moved up and just kind of read her job description. And I'm like, that's what we need. And Santa Fe is, smaller, I think, than us. So Babs, did you have your hand up?
I did. I was just going to reiterate what Paul was saying, which is that I would love to learn more, and I would love to see some models of what other cities are doing as far as this role is concerned. And it would be really great if there was actually other cities in North Carolina. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I definitely would like to see what this looks like in practice.
Okay. Well, let's do that. So I'll put, we'll put this as an agenda item to explore for the next meeting. But I really wanted to kind of bring attention to that, and really, acknowledge the community development team and Paul and Nikki's leadership through that, over the years, and looking of how we as a committee can support, the affordable housing mission and the needs of the department that's supposed to carry those out. And if we see things that could make that easier, that's something we can put our foot in the door and say that we should do this.
So Paul here, and I appreciate that. Nikki and I do, absolutely. And just a couple things. I will put my suggested new job title in the chat for you all to choose from today. So just let me know how that goes. President sounds good, but we'll figure that out. And then just to Andy's part about information and all that stuff, just to share this, if I may, for 60 seconds, is behind the scenes, we try to do our best to share as much information as possible. I hope you all have seen that with the community development updates, the information we try to share. We've got, I think, 400 people on our CD listserv right now that we share information on. And we look at AHAC and HCD as obviously two different committees, but we feel like what one sees, both see, and all of that. And so please know that, and again, I don't know if I need to say this, but it makes me feel good to say it. Like, we're doing our best to make sure, we're getting information out, who sees what, when, I want to make sure that we're providing what you all are looking for. But, we tried to look for that synergy. And at one point I had recommended, could we do AHAC before HCD? Because I feel like there'd be a better synergy there, but that got rejected, which is all good. But, what does that look like? Barry, could you attend HCD? And so you can bring back the report. We're good for any of it. If you guys want to see X first and Y second, all good. We're just trying to figure all of that out. But for what it's worth, all the information goes out. Everyone's available to look at. I just want to make sure you all realize our commitment in transparency and getting information out. And we're just trying to balance the roles of the committees and all that stuff. But all the info's there. We're available 24/7 to share information. I just want you, to hear from that. And then last thing is I would like to give Christina a moment, if we can, about that affordable housing calculator, to share her screen to get for 5 minutes. That would be great for you guys to see what we've tried to create for the community.
Thank you. Yep.
Outside of that homeless resource. Thanks, Barry. And Christina, if you're available to share your screen.
Yeah, Paul, I'm here. Can you all see my screen?
It looks like it's coming up right now, Christina. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I really wanted to give you guys an update on the affordable housing calculator that we've been working on with our IT department, in particular, Rick Barley, who has been a great partner in building this. What we've been working on is isolating some of the main topics and popular topics when it comes to inputting information towards affordable housing. So if you'll take a look here, I tried to input some information about, the gross annual household income, general household size of 4, a home price of $275, since that's kind of the affordable housing, amount that's in Asheville, North Carolina, and then the down payment amount. So I just generated some, basic amounts off the top of my head. They don't really go to any, specific individual. And if you'll notice here on this calculator, once we input this information, we can hit down here at the bottom, results have been updated. And then on the right-hand side, it'll kind of generate all of that information that we have put in. So we have the estimated monthly payment amount of $1,345, which someone is looking to pay monthly. That's about 21% of the gross monthly income. And then we have kind of, again, that general information of the household of 4 people with a gross income of $77,500 is in the area median income. So 100 to 120. So we tried to put that information in there. And also I just wanted to add, or update and add you all here, is that this is really dependent off of the Appendix 2 that was made by Paul. So, we're not kind of coming up with this stuff out of thin air either. So when you kind of move down on this calculator, or the results of the calculator, we have the options for overview and detail. Right now we're looking at the overview portion, and it just gives a basic financial overview that the home price is $275, the down payment is $55,500, closing cost is $3,700, loan amount is $223,200, and then cash up front, mortgage rate, loan period. It kind of goes through some of the different options we have here, and we chose the loan period of 30 years, thinking that that is a good kind of basis to start for homeowners. If we click over to the details portion of this calculator, it kind of goes into greater detail, which we are going to update this to actually build this calculator. What we're looking here is not what it looks like on the back end. So it's taking a little bit of tweaking. So unfortunately, this calculator isn't quite ready yet for the public, but we really did want to, reach out to you all with AHAC and let you know that we have been working diligently on this calculator and that we are making great progress. So looking at this detail portions, It just gives a monthly breakdown of some of the taxes and insurance costs that people could most likely expect. But yeah, this is pretty much the calculator that we've been working on, and we just wanted to present this to you all and get your updates or any kind of questions or concerns that we can take back when we go to kind of tweak this calculator a little bit more. So if you have any questions or concerns, let me know.
Christina and Barry, just quickly, Christina, thank you so much. And,
Yeah,
and
of
kudos
course.
to Christina. We've worked on this and then put this together. Christina just taking it to close to finish line. Some of you might be like, things like this already exist out there in the Google world. But what we wanted to try to do here was make this a little bit more Asheville centric, you know, to really tie into our AMIs. What are our tax rates? And exactly what that looks like. That estimated payment at the top there goes green if it's a nicely affordable thing. It'll go red if it's not. And then we might have a yellow for between 30 and 33% of gross income. And so as you move up that figure, so we've got that in there just to kind of play around, and there it goes red when as Christina's doing that. And so a little bit more Asheville centric tied to our AMIs. Yes, you know, the city, we are struggling and admit that coming up with a solution for down payment assistance and affordable housing and how we help with home ownership has been a struggle, especially with home prices that look like they're going to come in close to $400,000 in Asheville and Buncombe County this year. But this is, you know, a start for people to feel comfortable to where they can input some information. One quick question for you is, we're estimating an average interest rate of 3.5. We didn't know if you all thought we should allow, or we should let the individual, and of course we don't take names here or anything like that, so we're not holding on to that data. But should we allow them to choose the interest rate or leave it at 3.5? That was really one question that Christina and I struggled on. But otherwise, we hope y'all think this is a useful tool. We do, and happy to present it today. Christina, kudos, kudos, kudos. She's great and a great team member.
Thank you. No, it's great to see. Yeah, I was going to call on Paul Heathman, our resident finance guru.
Yeah, that sounded like my wheelhouse. So
it's your job description. I haven't looked at that yet to see what Paul D'Angelo wants. I know I heard him really he liked that housing czar. But
I
Paul,
accept the position. Thank you.
You know, I guess I kind of like the idea of us like choosing the interest rate, just because, you know, we can't expect someone to come in and know what the interest rate is. But, you know, Fannie Mae's just released their forecast. The Federal Reserve has just announced tapering yesterday, which speaks to the fact that interest rates may be increasing over the year. Even just this morning while I've been on this call, Britain has decided not to do that. So it's actually held our rates low just this morning, where they floated up yesterday, back down today because of the reaction. What I'm kind of trying to frame up here is that they're very volatile and they're on the move and a bit unexpected. So I think I like the idea of us sort of choosing the interest rate, just because how would anyone know what it is? You know, if you simply Google it, you get sort of, well, bad information, truth be told. So I think if we choose the interest rate, we just would need to keep an eye on it and be able and willing to update it pretty frequently, potentially, as the year goes on. You know, just I would be careful to like set it and leave it, or to take our eyes off of it.
So what I would ask is, if y'all notice, we have a little I dot next to each thing, which kind of provides some information. So if you would recommend a reasonable range, like maybe 2.25 to 5%, and in that little I dot that someone can click on, we can explain, you know, hey, these ranges can, this rate can range based on years of the mortgage, your credit score, etc. So that could be, maybe you could help us with that language and that range, Paul Heathman?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think, currently, just to speak to that, a range might be, we might be at 3% up to 3.5 or 3.625. It is dependent pretty heavily on several factors. But then
Well,
again, it's a moving target. But yeah,
we'll reach out, Paul, if that is okay with you, Christina and I.
that's wonderful. Thank you.
Andy?
One consideration as you're thinking about that range and what number you pick as the default, I think you might want to lean on the high side of whatever you come up with as average. Again, thinking of most of the folks who are looking at an affordable housing calculator are likely to be, first-time home buyers or higher risk borrowers, or we don't see a lot of people in our world, given the cost of renting in Asheville, who have, really perfect credit because they've used credit to balance out their household expenses when they're paying more than 50% of their income to rent every month. So I would lean a little bit on the high side of an interest rate just to put some reality to it. I'd hate for somebody to look at this and then think they could make something work and be surprised later.
I agree. I think that's certainly true. I see the same. And where it is now, that 3.5 is, I think, does represent that well. And I agree. We'll continue to be in that space.
Roger?
I just wanted to say that I think this is a great tool, and it really exacerbates the need for down payment assistance, because $55,000, holy Toledo! I mean, we've got parents that are going to just give you a gift here that just not the likely case. That's a lot of money. And even though you've got the housing price down at the very bottom, where are those people going to come up with $55,000? So we need to do something on that end also. And it's great tool. I love it.
Yeah. That was going to be my suggestion of it, is maybe create, there's a down payment line, but also create a separate down payment assistance line that rides along with the down payment. That way someone could punch in what a down payment assistance would look like separate than the down payment number. My screen is locked. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Scott?
I do like that it includes city and county taxes. I think that's a very helpful, relatively, I'll say it's a relatively fixed amount. It's not obviously not as variable as mortgage interest rates. So I think that's very helpful to include that, because sometimes it's, unless you really know how to look for it, it's kind of buried. So good job on that.
Okay. No one is moving on my screen.
Well, Barry, we can hear you, and I think we're good. We appreciate it, and this will be on the classic. Anyone can Google City of Asheville affordable housing. Our tab will come up. We've got resources. This will be additional resource, and of course, developer investment tools. Please share far and wide. It should be up hopefully by the end of next week.
I don't know if you all can hear me. I'm gonna have to log out and try to get back in. I'm having some technical difficulties.
Margie, while we're waiting on Barry, do you want to move us along, or just wait for Barry?
Yeah, no. Why don't we go ahead and move to the next item on the list, and that's kind of the real estate. Well, no, I'm sorry. We're looking at the homeless update. Am I looking at the right thing?
That's usually just a part. If anyone has any questions
Oh,
on community
questions
development,
on that. Okay.
we're good.
So then I
if
guess it is all the homes and things we have under the 275,000. There's a list of all of that stuff. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at that?
And Margie, just heads up, when you turn back towards your other screen, we lose your audio.
Okay, thank you.
All good.
So has everybody had a chance to look at the housing that we did? I know Barry usually does all of that, so I don't have everything in my on screen. Has everybody seen it? Looked at it? Any questions?
Hey Margie, when you're facing to your right, we can hear you, but when you're facing
Okay, great.
forward or to the left, we can't hear you.
I've got two screens going at the same time and one on the far left. So just talking about the housing, the $275,000, the list of all the single family homes, condos. Barry usually goes over that, and I don't have those to share, but they're in the packet. So any comments on those? Since we have some real estate folks here.
Sorry, all I got dropped off there.
We're talking about the housing.
Yeah, Barry's just, Margie's moved us to the next section just to talk about home prices, vouchers, etc.
Yep. Yeah, they're bad. The amount of inventory was like that. I think when I sent it over, that was the lowest I had ever seen of the amount of inventory available. Did you got through any other questions anyone had on that? Looks like Scott.
I was just going to comment. I noticed on the list that there's 622 Reed Street. I currently live right up the street from that. And if you go by that, it's maybe, I mean, I think it's listed at 129. It's either a full rehab or a tear down. I mean, the land's probably worth more than the house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I call those things dozer bait.
Yeah.
And I think some of those, sometimes what shows up on the list are just they're really the land value.
Right. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on the list or about the HACA vouchers? I really appreciate that report, Brandy. It's been it's been the new one the past couple of months, but it's been really insightful watching that.
Good. I'm glad you're getting good information off that.
All right. The questions will move on. Let's see. Just brief up on our task forces. So our build committee, our last meeting, we had Ricky Hurley from City Development Services Planning Department. It was great. It's been really nice having some of these intimate conversations with some of the players that really, and hearing some of their suggestions, for how things could be made affordable or see what their barriers are. Again, our committees, I think the ultimate goal is to kind of help put together kind of a handbook for how to build more affordably and to identify the barriers and where we can help break them down. I think our next meeting is next week.
Who do we have at that one, Barry?
Don't have lined up yet. It's either going to be Chad or Nancy Watford, but I don't have a confirmation yet. We'll get somewhere. Andy, kind of y'all want to share on your Connect? So I know you guys had a meeting last week and you had some important stuff we were talking about.
Yeah, we are continuing to move forward on that the project that we laid out for us of going through the city's housing resource guide and reaching out to some of the property managers and making sure that we really understand what their capacity is, vacancy rates, some of the kind of maybe more hidden qualifications for folks to be able to access those rental units. So we're working on pulling that survey together. And we spent a lot of time talking about the open seat that we have on the committee right now and how we might individually do some outreach to organizations that that provide housing so that we could, or are working in community organizing low wage households so that we could try to bring some folks with lived experience in affordable housing or with the struggle of attaining affordable housing onto this committee so that voice was represented in this open seat.
Cool. Yeah, we appreciate that. To remind everybody, Amber Banks had resigned her seat, and so that leaves us with an open seat that is currently advertised. I think applications are due, I think it was December or sometime. It's posted on the boards and commissions area and the city clerk website. But that seat, while not mandated to be, was definitely in our guidelines, should be someone who is a resident or in need of affordable housing or a renter. And so we're trying to do as a committee, and I appreciate the help from the Connect task force for trying to make sure we do good outreach from that, because we put together such a well-rounded committee. We want to make sure that all the voices are heard and that we have good, well-rounded discussions. So thank y'all. Let's see, anything else we want to share? Any other questions about the task forces? Okay, moving on. The next, it shows on the agenda our list of challenges, which is kind of I know we have that's kind of what we're tackling in some of our task forces. But I think maybe we'll look at in the future. I'll look at combining those items, since instead of just discussing them each time, it's kind of what we're looking for in the task forces. Next up, we have for the planning open space amendment. That committee, I think, has had its final meetings. And Scott, Margie, and Chris have been on the committee, and there's some. I'll let you guys kind of give us the background, and you're looking for just kind of our committee recommendation of this letter. That way, we endorse it.
Sure. So I, as part of the today's agenda packet, I assume or hope everyone's had a chance to just briefly glance at the letter that I prepared. Currently, I'm stating it as coming from Margie and I. And the reason that I did that, just on kind of short turnaround, was originally the recommendations to the open space standards and the UDO were supposed to go to planning and zoning yesterday. That was moved to December. So there's now the opportunity for the full committees, affordable housing, AHAC, Riverfront, downtown. There were, I think, 8 different groups on the open space task force. So there's now the opportunity for each full committee to just, review and endorse either a letter that's coming from the group and or the standards. And the gist of the letter that I prepared was that, Margie and I, through our work, and then of course Chris has actually been a representative on the open space task force from DCAG, which Chris will have to pipe in to remind me of what that acronym means. But
right.
The gist of the letter that I wrote was pointing out that through the process, there's been some, what I'll characterize as overrepresentation from the Urban Forestry Commission, having 4 members on the open space task force at various points. And of course, that's been I'd say a constant point of discussion between Urban Forestry Commission and the remainder of the task force on standards. And a lot of it's really just been a consideration of the spatial demands of the standards, especially on smaller urban sites. That's what Margie and I both kept coming back to. And I think Chris could maybe just speak briefly to that also, of just trying to balance the realities of that. So the letter essentially says that we support the standards as they're proposed. And we're also, I just put a brief phrasing in there of trying to balance, the needs and perceptions of current residents versus future and new residents. I think that's a big focus of our committee in terms of access to housing and, the creation of more housing just for people in Asheville. So that's the gist of the letter. Any comments or questions? And if Margie and Chris want to briefly chime in on their observations on the work of the committee, on the work of the task force.
Well, I think that we represented the practical side of everything, that we understand the need for open space and we want to have a certain amount of open space, but there is a practical side for the density that we need to have affordable housing to service the community and the future community and the growth that is happening. We have to be very practical about having a denser buildings. And sometimes that means taking up more space to be able to get there and to be able to make it affordable for the developer. And because sometimes the smaller you get, that means it becomes they can't make it work. The numbers just don't work. So we tried to represent the practical side of it. We weren't successful in some cases, but we did our best.
I'll echo that, and it looks like Vanilla's popped in as well. So I actually represented the Development Services Advisory Group on that, but interestingly enough, it was my interest in affordable housing that that really kind of pushed me into pointing some of these open space specifically as being a hindrance towards meeting the goals of some of the other incentives for affordable housing that the city had in the code. And so while it's been a very challenging or a long drawn out process, I do feel like my intention of getting in and being on that board is a lot of those goals are coming to fruition in terms of removing some of the blocks that were creating challenges for meeting the incentives of open space. The other thing that was successful in there, the adaptive reuse, I was wanting to make sure that that the new codes did not honestly promote situations where you would go take a greenfield and build a new project, because adaptive reuse of a building was becoming challenging to meet some of the full zoning compliance. I think open space has been a good step there. I think there's actually other components of the UDO that would benefit. At the Homeward Bound project at the Days Inn is a perfect example of a great adaptive reuse. But when you start trying to bring a site into full compliance, like it was a brand new site from an undeveloped piece of property, you really start running into roadblocks that can swing budgets widely and make things not feasible. And so some of the open space, I think we're good in that situation. But I would just make a statement that there's other aspects of the UDO that can kind of get in the way of adaptive reuse, which I think is a great tool for providing affordable housing.
Andy, I think you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I had it up and then I took it down. I'm still trying to get my head around what the standards actually are as we go through this and how they might apply to. It doesn't look to me that there's a reduction in open space requirements for multifamily if there's an affordable component, but it doesn't look like a single family subdivision of more than 8 units or 8 units or more has a reduction if it's an affordable development. And I'm looking at this and thinking about some of the small infill developments that we've done that are really kind of fill a niche of extending, kind of connecting sewer and water infrastructure, road infrastructure, building out unused right of ways that exist, and some of those projects are kind of right at this size where they're just over an acre, but maybe due to topography can't get more than 8 units in there, and this could really cost a unit of production to fit some of this in. So I wondered what the discussion was in the committee around single family. It looks like most of what was adapted here was around multifamily.
If you'd like, I could share a few slides to help clarify a little bit.
Sure. Thanks, Vidila.
Sure. First, this is to show kind of where we're going compared to other cities. The blue is kind of the lower end of open space. The red is a higher end. And you see today's open space is shown over here on the right. And then the far right is the proposed. So the first idea that I want to share is that our minimum is right around kind of the low of all cities. But one thing that we've recognized that is really striking is that the upper range of required open space is actually almost a minimum standard requirement for infill. And let me tell you how that works. Looking at a couple of existing projects, this is a building I lived in just near Trader Joe's and Harris Teeter. It was built before open space regulations, but if we had open space regulations to inform its building, our current regulations would require this much space, which is more than 75% of the lot. And so what we're proposing is a significant reduction, but it's really because the code is so broken. And I know this isn't about single family, but I'll get to that. But this sort of feeds into to that narrative. Another example is a smaller lot where you might see a 10-unit building. This is a sort of a smaller apartment house. And under today's regulations, you would have to provide 5,000 square feet of open space, which would be the front yard, the entire building, and the parking area, which basically makes it not viable. And what we're proposing is effectively the front yard would be required for open space. So it's a significant reduction because of a significantly broken code that's been in place for many, many years and has put negative pressure on infill for all these years. For commercial, it's a similar story. I'll just answer this question that if you have an acre or more, that you have to provide 50% of their parcel as open space. And if not, you can choose to provide stormwater controls that in some cases, if it's a greenfield site, you have to do it anyway. But if not, you have to voluntarily choose to do that. And then you can get this lower reduction. And so I'll just skip to the end here, which was, I think, Andy's question about subdivisions. Currently required 20% open space required. Under the proposed, it's 10 to 15%. And we're being very clear that the right-of-way is not included. So you get to pull out your street and all the right-of-way. So it's going to be a reduction for subdivisions across the board.
Wow, thank you. I don't think I've ever understood it quite like I do now. That's really well illustrated. Thank you.
Sure.
Andy brings up a good question. So I really appreciate your comparison graphs to kind of really hit home as to how we compare to other cities. Did one of those compare single family, or is that something that we could look at as well, how that impacts the?
Well, it's tricky because really the only comparison there is going to be subdivisions, and the standards are so varied across the board. Like Raleigh has a standard where they have a conservation subdivision where you have to set aside 40% open space, but the minimum tract size is 10 acres. So, I'm not sure how comparable it is to Asheville. And that seemed like it would have been sort of hard to do, to really compare apples to apples. So for single family, it's only going to be through the subdivisions. There are no restrictions just on single family development. For our project, the trigger is 8 units or 8 lots. Below that, there's no open space required.
Let's see. Yeah, I think that residential line is the one that I think that's what was in your examples, Vidillo, is what was causing, like if it's currently 500 square feet a unit or 15%, whichever is greater. Yeah. If you have like a 10 unit apartment building on an infill site, that would mean, according to this, you'd have to have 5,000 square feet of open space. And so then this new way would adjust that by making it more in line with the scope of the project.
Exactly. It relates to the parcel size.
Yeah.
So if it's a smaller parcel, smaller open space required.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, this is really helpful. So I guess, as a committee, we're being asked, we've had Margie and Scott on it representing our committee. The next step is going the P&Z, right? So they've prepared a letter, and they're asking, and we're being asked to, kind of endorse that say we voted on this, we agree, we endorse this, and it helps with the, maybe the authority of that letter. So if everyone's had a chance to review it, does anyone have any discussion or thoughts on if we can, as a committee, can just vote to, put our committee stamp on that letter? Does anyone have any thoughts of that? No. Scott?
I will just quickly add, while Vidilla's here. Vidilla, thank you for attending this. So that, I guess, the technicality of representation that I pointed out, Vidilla and I did, bring that up during the process. So it's not, I certainly don't want to make it a, any kind of leveling at staff of like, staff did or did not do this. So I was mainly just pointing out just numbers wise and frequency of representation wise, who was there, arguing for, one position or another. So just want to make that clear. And Vidilla, thank you very much for the preparation of those slides. Was there one more you had in there?
One more slide in the presentation. I had a lot of slides I didn't show you.
Okay.
I think they're tangential and not, key to this. I'll just, to piggyback on your point about the representation. I think what was a little bit confusing is at least one member who sits on the Urban Forestry Commission was the representative for NAC.
Right.
But wears two hats, and so that may seem unfair.
Right.
Small city.
Hey, Vidilla, this is Paul here. Could you share that presentation with us? Is that possible? I don't know if we linked it in the agenda or not, but we can certainly share it out to the team if you're okay with that, Vidilla.
Yes, that's fine. I'll do that right now. This is the presentation I gave to the Urban Forestry Commission a couple days ago, but yeah, I'll put that in the chat.
Appreciate it, Vidilla.
Okay. All right. Well, in efforts of moving forward, I'd like to make a motion that the Affordable Housing Committee endorse the letter prepared by Scott and Margie regarding the open space amendments. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor? I guess I'll do a quick roll call vote on this since we're voting on something we're passing along. Scott Adams.
Aye.
The one that's on here, Paul Heathman.
Aye.
Margie.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Randy.
Aye.
Babs.
Aye.
Andy.
Aye.
I don't think setting this up in a discussion, maybe create a affordable housing summit that involves us with some of the council members. But I think I'm keeping that driving, but we're not like specifically in discussion the next agenda for HCD. But I'm keeping this up at the top of the list because I feel, and we as a committee have discussed how important this is. So, Angelica, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to make you all aware that I think there was a connection issue for about 20 seconds from before I raised my hand, so that may not have been broadcast. And I'll let you know if there's any ongoing connection issues.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anyone else want, before I move off that, you know, the item of AHAC seeing HCD, does anyone else want to say anything specific about it? All right, cool. We'll just let you know. I'm let's say my foot's holding the door open. Let's see. Under our new business, we have the scaled affordable housing rebates or credits for shorter term commitments. We had a kind of a discussion. We went around asking our committee members about it last, so it kind of opened up a good discussion. I don't know if you all saw it. It actually got picked up by the newspaper. It was a pretty good article, kind of bringing attention to it. Thought that was good. I wanted to so one little thing on the next item for fee rebates that kind of is on there. I just wanted to share one piece that kind of ties along in with this, our discussion on the small project rebates. So we had discussed about the fee rebate program in the past and how it's about its use and non-use now because the program has changed. So it pretty much stopped. It's the way it was in effect discontinued, which allowed the rebate of the MSD fees, portion of the MSD fees, portion of the water fees, portion of the city development fees. That program, in most effects, stopped in 2016, and there's a current rebate program, but it's tied into guaranteed affordability. So one of the things that had been asked of the committee when we discussed this, and that fee rebate is, if you want to look at the list, it is in the community development updates in the link in the there's a link to it in the how to find it, but sorry, I don't have the updates in front of me, but it's in the section of the agenda that well, sorry, there is. It's on the community development updates. There's a link to kind of the housing trust fund, that spreadsheet, and one of the tabs on it is the fee rebates. So you can look at those that kind of go through from 2011 to 2016. So one of the questions we had about that was kind of what's happened with those. So I had my staff actually prepared a study. I had them go through the list of all of the houses that went through, at least for the for sale received for sale rebates. So there was 116 total fee rebate for sale homes that happened between 2011 and 2016. A lot of those that was when kind of some private builders were using it more because it didn't have the 20-year guarantee. A lot of the projects were obviously Habitat for Humanity and some mountain housing, not as many. But so that total amount was 116. What we did is a study that we looked at, of those 116, 35 of those houses since the rebate was granted have sold. So that's 30% of them have sold. So 70% of them have basically remained with the original, the original owners. Of those 35 that sold, what we did is we looked at the year that each of them sold, and we compared it to the current year affordable standards for the year in which the property sold. And then we looked at what was still considered affordable at the time that the property turned, and then what was not considered affordable. So of those 116, like I said, 35 sold. 18 of those 35 were sold at affordable standards for the sale year, and then 17 sold at what's considered non-affordable standards for the sale year. So that means of the 116, total fee rebates that were granted, 17 of those which is 14%, are what are not, didn't turn at current affordable standards. So it's just some data I just wanted to share. I thought it was valuable just to kind of see that it's a program that was easier to use fee rebate. It didn't involve any kind of guarantee that the project was going to have to remain affordable. But of those 85% of them remained affordable. So I thought it was just some valuable data to share and I can share some of the specific research on that, because what we did is we compared we tracked all the sales prices in the years, and we looked at how much above they were of what the current affordable housing standards were at that time. Chris?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. Thank you, Barry. That's processing that, but I really like I like this information. One point of clarification. So you said that 85% of them had remained affordable, and then there were like maybe 35 of the units were resold, but it sounded like half of the resale still remained affordable.
Yep. What we did for those standards is like, so example, I'll just look at one of them I've got. So if a property that in November 2011, the original sales price was $146,000 of a property. It sold in October 2016, for $180,000, and at that time, the current standards by the HUD guidelines for sale prices was $209,000. So it sold below what those current affordable standards are. So we did this on any of the. So we looked at all 116, and then we looked at anything that the deeds had transferred on, and we looked at the sales price of the deed transfer, and then compared that to the current HUD standard for that year for maximum price. So it's that was at least the method we followed. So overall, like what kind of wrapped up, I said, was that of the 116 that had been used in the program, 17 or what now, when the property turned was outside of current standards. And, that ranged from some was like, I'm just briefly looking, somewhere $1,000 over. One was as much as $60,000 over. And it's interesting to see, you can see it was definitely driven by neighborhoods, because anything that was like in core West Asheville, that was really where the most rapid acceleration in pricing was. It was pretty much very predictable. If I saw a West Asheville address, that was generally one of the ones that would turn. So, so I think some of this data might, is valuable to look at a program that doesn't have mandatory compliance, just kind of what the net effect are. And then to look at maybe, how, maybe there's maybe the program focuses on, maybe we look at focusing on the boundaries where we know there's not going to be the rapid acceleration. I don't know, but I'll share some of this in great detail. I just wanted to kind of share at least what our staff put together, because I thought it was something our committee members had asked to look at that. So we kind of did the research and, got some broad view data on it.
Kudos to your staff. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give a shout. But I think you met her. Kristen is my assistant, and so I sent Kristen on this project, and she was very happy to assist. Chris, do you have another question?
I do. So the just to reiterate, this was done before there was a deed restriction for 20 years aspect. Do we know how much the program has? How many less, I guess, applications have occurred since the deed restriction requirement was put in place? And so that is there a correlation we could find that says, once that deed restriction got in place, we lost the incentive for people to provide affordable housing?
I'll bring Paul D'Angelo in for this. I'd asked Paul and, to kind of help find that number. We don't have usage. We don't have any usage statistics for the program past 2016. It kind of went over rebates for future. That way we can put anything specific on a future agenda, or we want to just kind of leave it as a discussion.
But we don't call them to remind them like, hey, don't forget, come back for your free rebates. We just kind of let them know. And then if they put all that stuff in. So I don't know if we need to be better about that. So all that to say, to your point, Barry, about trying to create a Luigi for smaller infill developers, do we then recombine the Luigi and fee rebates for a smaller developer in one policy that might be a little bit simpler? That's where my brain has gone since you've started this conversation. I think our task as a division department is to work on a draft of a smaller Luigi, or a Luigi for smaller infill developers, perhaps say under, my brain goes to 10, 12, or 20 units. And perhaps we add the fee rebates into that policy as well, which have less of a kick or a sting or whatever you want to say there. So that's where I don't know if I'm answering you, Chris, but that's kind of where my brain's going.
Has I guess I would probably put this in, and I'll say, well, the study we specifically did was on for sale product, which like currently a Luigi doesn't work for. Luigi really is just for rentals. But I'd probably ask Andy so Andy was, obviously Habitat was one of the biggest users of this program. Since 2016, what is your experience with the fee rebate program? What are you using for your houses? You're muted.
We haven't done a lot of units in the city of Asheville since the new fee rebate policy was established, whenever that was, 2019 or so I really can't speak to what our experience has been working under that. We did look at when the new fee rebate policy came out, we did look at it, and despite its complications, we can probably find a way to make it work, because most of our developments already have some sort of long-term affordability restriction on them. So, but we haven't been able to do anything. Just to go back to the conversations that we had in 2016, 17, 18 around this. To Paul's point, for developers to, maybe they don't even remember that they are eligible for a fee rebate by the time they get to, when they can claim it. If folks are committing to meeting an affordable standard at the front end because of financing that they're taking, just make it a fee waiver. It's a much better incentive if it's a fee waiver rather than you pay it and then get it back later. And a simpler calculation, just linking it to the, for sale stuff, linking it to the HUD home sales price limit, so that whether that project sold at an affordable rate or didn't sell at an affordable rate. I'm for easy in getting these kinds of things done. We made a really complex policy that achieves on paper an important policy goal of securing long-term affordability, but then it didn't get used. So that, I just think we've got to watch that kind of perfect being the enemy of the good enough in policy making.
So I appreciate that, Angie. I don't know necessarily, since we haven't seen some of our, most of our Luigi deals and those fee rebates, like none of them, only one of them is closed. So we're not necessarily sure. They won't be able to come back until they, it's paid and then it's rebated and, they've got the CO. I hear that point about fee waivers, but I think there's a statute there on something with affordability that we can't just waiver them. Although there's been talk about waivering them around homelessness. So I will look into that. But, for what it's worth, we did put that policy together that we feel, simple, usable, and equated to a dollar amount that's easy to follow, we think. But we will definitely talk about that and look at that. I just feel like people haven't come back yet for their fee rebates, and that's what we're waiting on. But we'll see. And then tying it to HUD home prices for that affordability, I'm not sure about that, because we want to also make sure, for-profits and others who may not be tagging it with home funding all can take advantage of it. And it does have a home ownership component as well. So again, it's probably worth a review. We did, for what it's worth, take it out of having to take it to city council. That got approved, so it can be approved on a staff level. So we simplified that. But maybe it is time, Andy, to your overall point, is let's take another look at it at some point and kind of read through it to see if it is as simple as we think it is. It sounds like we might be wrong, or the jury's still out.
Yeah, I think to your point, Paul, there just haven't been enough projects that have come through since the new policy was put in place to know whether it's not working or just hasn't worked yet.
Right. But I want to make sure that if I have not heard a developer say it's difficult, but our ears need to be open to that, i.e. the developer forum that's happening on November 19th, which I hope everyone's coming to, and asking some questions about, do our policies themselves, Andy, to your point, fight against affordability, which I feel like several of you all have talked about, but does that need to be talked about at the developer forum? But no, I think overall, I think it sounds like, not only that smaller Luigi, but let's take another look at fee rebates.
Margie?
I was just going to say that as we look at that for the smaller developer and the Luigi and the fee rebates, also look at the length of the affordability term. And I know that's something that we have talked about, but I'm talking about for the smaller entity. So because I'm hearing from some people that, that 20 years, it's just a killer for them. They can't deal with it, even with the Luigi incentives. So something just to think about as you're reviewing everything.
Absolutely, and not to add, the constant balancing act here, but we're getting word from people that are wondering why everything that we do isn't permanently affordable. So on the whole flip side of that, and yes, I'm very aware somebody wants an affordable unit to be permanently, we're looking at a $500,000 subsidy per unit, and so that's but how do we balance this? But our overall goal is to play to the strengths of that individual developer on what they like to do and how they like to do it, and how can our policies fit in. Same point, we don't want 10 different policies for all the different developers, but I think we can do larger multifamily, smaller infill, and start there and see what that looks like.
I think we have to have some flexibility in dealing with the different developers. I'm not saying have a smorgasbord, but I am saying that I think we have to not have one size fits all no matter what and be just adamant about it. I think we have to recognize that there are different people.
Yeah, I think it's
absolutely
the analogy. I've said a few times. It's like I think having for especially smaller developers, just having options for a way to try a program out. It's like, I said, you need to date before you get married, and maybe there's a way we can buy them dinner without having to buy them a ring. But that's kind of what I look at, because the fee rebate program it wasn't something that cost the city much. That was kind of what was, it wasn't, the fee rebate program wasn't a city expense. It wasn't a mainline city expense. It was basically endorsing others that then really did the bulk of the carry on it. Chris?
Yeah, I was just going to add, thanks, Paul. Great that city staff is working on smaller scale land use incentive grant incentives. But you used the term that the rebate was icing on the cake, and I feel like that's a really good analogy. I also want to make sure that this group, as we're meeting with builders and so forth with the build group, trying to find incentives towards that really small scale, where it's somebody building one ADU in their backyard, or somebody building just a single family home, that then incentivize them to sell that at an affordable rate. So I know, Barry, you've probably got maybe more experience in that world, but I feel like that's a key component of what we're hearing in the build group, that trying to find ways to incentivize that type of infill, super small scale.
Yeah. There's so many people now who want to build, who would like a house with an ADU, and it's not always, or a duplex, and the purpose is not always just short-term rental. Despite what the media might make it sound like, there's a lot of people who really do want to provide, and if there's some kind of small incentives, there might be more of that. And that's kind of, that's been the purpose of kind of this discussion, is that what we kind of looked at is some of these policies, especially some of the policy shifts in the current policies are really, some of them are great, and I don't disagree with some of the standards, but they're focused on larger scale products. So I think it's in some ways, we really need to look at, from the tiniest, from how does someone put an ADU in their backyard and get some credit on the, credit for that, to how do you, how can we incentivize fourplexes, or, what zoning, basically what the zoning has adjusted, zoning changes have happened to make it easier to do that. So we need to also kind of match what zoning is, like the things that have happened with zoning changes and state legislature changes. We need to kind of look at match with affordable rebate programs, so we can incentivize keeping them as, for affordable rather than, short term. But
Barry, just one quick thing, if I may, and I certainly don't want to reverse my role here and give you all homework. However, there is a developer forum next week, and perhaps, Barry, you as the chair, I've heard from Chris Day about the challenges with regs and ordinances being against affordable housing. You've talked about those things, Andy, and how do we fund infrastructure, and several of you who brought things to our, I would recommend, if I may, a letter in advance of the developer forum with AHAC's, sure, a couple of kudos about, some things are great, and yep, we're looking at this, but we still see X, Y, and Z challenges, and maybe those could be sent to you, Barry, or we could assist in putting those in a format. I just think that kind of transparent and open conversation is only something that the city can learn from, and I think it would be really helpful.
Great, I appreciate that. Yeah, we will. It's a good reminder of that coming up in it's November 19th. Is that correct? Yep. And I think you're correct. Yeah, we probably should put together some talking points from us.
Barry, up to you. I think we could proceed, and we've got the minutes, I guess, and most of it will be posted. So I think that we could. I think that's fine then. We'll just proceed for now.
I think so. Because I'm looking at the time. We're supposed to wrap not too long from now.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think what we're going to do, is we'll keep this conversation on our agenda, and then there's like a $1 lot program or something. So I just want to see if there's any more information that can be shared on that, or.
Sure. No. And great question, Barry. So we are waiting on the due diligence should be back any day now on this parcel. The classic, environmental, et cetera, that we've looked at from the city side. And then the seller, we've asked for some information from, and hopefully, again, all of that should be happening. I would assume by next week, we should get that information back. And then I think there will be a meeting with city management to take a look at so if it's a good site, able to support 40 units of home ownership, give or take, then I think the city, looking at that due diligence data, talking to the seller about the data they're providing, then is there a possibility of purchasing that site with city funds such as land banking and down payment assistance dollars to purchase and make the site pad ready to possibly then have, again, give or take 40 lots is what we are looking at, and what we've been told from the seller, that 40 lots could then be created. And then by the nature of using funds from the city, particularly down payment assistance, that way we have a lot that could be sold for $1 and then immediately remove those costs, obviously, from the sales price. We have recognized, and it's a conversation, a seller who presented to city management, and conversations about how, we have to be cautious in those discussions just because it could inflate the price, et cetera. But we have asked for movement on that, so that if that happens, then we would immediately, for process sake, I believe, go out to the community to make sure that this is something that they would want to see, and then come back to AHAC to say, this is on the table as a down payment assistance use, albeit not in the traditional sense, and have that discussion with AHAC as the policy is back in to ready to go back out to RFP per se. But there's been a pause because we think this is an avenue worth exploring that could, maybe take $50,000 to $60,000 off of a home price right off the bat, and then they could go out, hopefully, and get additional down payment assistance from traditional methods to buy down the price. So not much has changed in the aspect, Barry, of just the waiting game of the due diligence. And of course, we have to RFP all that stuff. So there's a process to get to pick somebody to do all that work, et cetera. But we think it is an avenue worth exploring because, as you all see, last thought, if a home price right now is $375,000, $400,000 on average, we got to buy it down by $125,000. Coming up with down payment assistance in that amount is how, do we do that? But if we're taking the land cost out of the equation, and then they can go for traditional down payment assistance of $40,000 or something through another avenue, then can we do something here? So we think it's worth exploring, but it will come back to AHAC because that's policy driven, and that's asking you all to get your feedback.
That's what I was kind of why I wanted to bring this up is a couple things. Like, I think it's an innovative way of looking at it, but I think we should be discussing this on the forefront of this as a policy and working out the policy details rather than designing a policy to fit one specific site. And I understand why the site can't get discussed with us, but I feel like this could be a great policy tool. But I also, it feels backwards that we're looking to acquire a piece of land, holding off doing a long discussed down payment policy to redraft something for a hypothetical piece of land, and then designing the policy when we should be discussing this idea of this policy. Because I guess there's one that was on the committee when Oak Hill was being discussed, and it wasn't brought to us in full light ahead of time, and we warned them, like, there's a lot of stuff on this site, don't do this. Or even Oak Hill is this prime example. Oak Hill, yes, it wasn't perfect for the site for what it was going to be, but Oak Hill could be actually a model site for using for this kind of program, for designing a policy around, because Oak Hill could be a single family home site. So I think that's what I'd just like to see is like again, with keeping our foot in the door, that this could be a great policy discussion. But if we're looking at shifting down payment assistance, which is something this committee has spent God knows how many years on, to then say, oh, halt on this because we're now going to put it on one specific site to adjust the policy. I'm like, well, let's look at designing a policy that fits other pieces of land. So that's kind of why I wanted to bring this up, and why I guess maybe what we'll do on our agenda for next time is discuss, if this isn't works, then discuss a specific application of down payment assistance for specific, for this dollar lot program. So that's my thought on this.
Absolutely. And I guess from what I understand, AHAC would have the ability to say, I would assume, or make the recommendation. I could be wrong here. I don't think legal's on, but you all could say that you don't think that this is an appropriate use of down payment assistance, and that you want the traditional form. And let's get that back out to RFP to see if somebody wants to be able to run that program and work that process. Or you could say that, obviously when we examine the due diligence, the environmental and all that stuff, and if that looks good, we would come back to say we're recommending staff, if we do, of using $1 million to put into this to create 40 lots for home ownership. And then the committee would then debate that, whether they think that's, I don't know if we'd have to create a policy around using the funding like that, but I don't know. I'd have to ask legal if we'd have to actually change the policy. There's no technical policy right now because we haven't really been able to, work with a partner to be able to do that funding. But I think all of those discussions could happen if we come back to you to say, this looks good. The down payment assistance looks good. To add to this, the parcel looks good. What say AHAC? And absolutely that, because that's part of bond policy, and policy is AHAC.
Andy?
Yeah, maybe this is for next month and a follow-up discussion on this, but I would compare down payment assistance versus this sort of development funding model. It's sort of the difference between you know, we've talked a lot about housing choice vouchers lately, and versus, you know, project-based or site-specific housing. You know, we have lots of tools to develop affordable housing. What we don't have is a tool that's flexible that allows buyers to move in the market and to create affordability throughout our housing market. And that's what a down payment assistance loan does. It lets the individual buyer initiate the creation of affordable housing, you know, by working within the market. So to take that and then layer it onto, you know, a development oriented subsidy, I mean, the pragmatist in me says that's probably the best way for us to get this, you know, money out the door by the end of the bond cycle. But from a policy standpoint, they're two separate tools, and we have a lot of tools for place-based development. What we don't have is this sort of market corrective tool that a down payment assistance loan can be for an individual home buyer. So that's just for the committee as we're thinking about this for discussion next time around. I mean, that's the fundamental difference in those two strategy, you know, kind of policy approaches.
Yeah, I think I think that's what we'll do. We'll move this again to the next agenda item, and we'll specifically talk about the idea, because I think you're right, Andy. I think they're two separate things, and I think we should, before a piece of land gets committed to with the idea that that funding is going to go to, we should really discuss this as a policy, because maybe, I mean, they could be both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. I mean, one could be purchased through land banking, and then the lots, you know, it doesn't have to be one or the other. And I do, you know, yeah, my heart sinks a little bit thinking about a down payment program that's put so much work into it's not being kind of portable, you know. But yeah,
and I absolutely appreciate that, and I do not mean to be difficult at all here, but you know, please know that there was difficulty, completely disagreement amongst AHAC and others about whether this would be a grant or a loan. We identified from the onset it was $80,000 to purchase a price down. The down payment assistance policy that we put forward, I think, was a max of only putting $35,000 into it. Where does the rest of that money come? I think it could be easily argued that now that's $100,000 that we need down payment assistance. Is that a grant or a loan? Are we going to do 10 loans out of the $1 million? And then grant it? What does that look like? These are all the difficult issues that we've talked about coming to terms. No judgment, just pasting some facts here. And it's a very difficult discussion on getting some agreement forward. And then can we, putting it back out there, you know, it was like, you know, asking people to say, what do you recommend, a grant or a loan? And then what amount could come back? All of that will factor into it. And so just that we look at this as a potential, no decision has been made, but could this be, using this $1 million, this one chance $1 million, is there a chance to go in on the front end, to Andy's point, on the land? And then how do we go in find a partner to go in on the back end for the rest of the money? Because we know what housing prices have been and are. So that's just to say, you know, there's still difficult conversations to be had around this in the future. And we're not looking for an easy way out, but we think, wow, this could actually assist 40 home buyers and buy the price down maybe by 50 or 60,000, then what can we do if we partner with certain developers who are in the business for lower housing costs, and how does it all work? So all good. I think these will be great discussions, but where we've been is tough with figuring out the amount, grant versus loan. And that was a heavy debate back in February and March.
Yep. Yeah, I do think anything, I mean, without obviously knowing the site, anything with 40 lots, probably would be almost, you know, with our experience with the city, would be almost 2 years before it would even be ready to be sold, you know, to individual buyers, you know, unless it's a perfect piece of land with everything. It just, you know, this process takes a long time for development here. I mean, I'm selling houses in one of my developments now that we've owned the land for 5 years. It just takes a long time. So anyway, but what I'll do is let me get Andy's question, because we do have to move towards wrapping up, but we will have this up as a specific thing for next meeting.
You're good. Just keep going.
All right. Thanks. All right. Thanks. It was a fun down payment assistance conversation. Housing trust fund, free rebate, penalties. Is there any study, I know we talk about wanting to look at some data. Maybe we just need to look at some examples of like, what if, what are the what ifs? Like, I don't even understand, like, if someone that way we know, like, I don't know exactly what the penalties are. So maybe there is kind of this there's a scaled program already. Like if someone says, I'm going to do it for 20 years, but they only do it for 10, what does it cost them?
So it's written into, I believe the trust fund and Luigi have language written into them in the policies, but it's interesting this question comes up every couple of weeks from people wanting to, so far we haven't had this happen, and we've written in, I'm getting the sense, and I've made a note that the community feels like we need to strengthen the penalty around these policies, but no one needs to be penalized. So not that we want to be very aware of that. And Janice and I have talked about this, Janice, Ashley, and legal, that, do we need to it's on my list to retake a look at, does the policy talk strongly enough about the penalties and what to do? We feel it does, but maybe we need to beef up that section a little bit. Although, cart horse, we're not seeing a bunch of people fall out of, none as far as I'm aware of, out of compliance. However, this question comes up literally every 2 to 3 weeks. I get an email about it. Like, what if? So I want to address those.
Yeah, maybe we'll run a couple of individual scenarios. That way we see what just spreadsheet 1 or 2 specific examples to see what it would be. The same way, like we just did this fee rebate study thing that showed only 15, without any, mandates, only 15% of them ended up outside of it. So I don't know. But we'll kind of explore that. But I'm curious to know, like, how to quantify what that looks like if someone builds an 8-plex and 2 units are supposed to be for affordable housing, and then it changes. What is the penalty? Because there might be that penalty might already be what we are discussing of a small scale rebate, like an adjustable rebate that's in place, that it's through the back end rather than through the front end. I don't know, but we'll try to explore some specific examples so we can discuss this a little bit better.
Copy that, Barry.
Thank you. All right, I do need to work towards wrapping up. One thing I do one public comment we will get to, and then ask for more. There was a section called innovations in affordable housing. So what I did, I wanted to share. Part of it was a discussion about the micro apartments and then also about tiny houses. So Raleigh's Planning Commission just passed an ordinance that allows tiny houses to be used as basically ADUs. So it allows them in all of their zonings, in residential zonings now, in their, so they can be backyard homes. They have to meet the specific like HUD requirements, whatever the requirements are for building them as park model trailers. But I shared what passed Raleigh's Planning Commission in the document. So I'd like to kind of just take a look at that, because I think this will come up as a conversation specifically for us as an affordable housing tool. If we're going to look at doing rebates, whether it's Luigi or whatever, is the rebate the same, or does it need to be scaled because of the size of the unit? So the conversation will be on, like, this one, I think it's called The Niche on Hilliard, is an example of this micro apartment complex, which I think is a great idea, but it's putting I think it's like 80 units that are about 200 something square feet. And if they designate 20% affordable, does that count, or is there some kind of square footage minimum? So I think it's an interesting topic, and I think I was really pleased to see that coming up, and then also really pleased to see Raleigh passing allowing tiny homes, and I think that might open up the conversation for here. So we can.
And Barry, I know we're going to public comment, but I appreciate that. We did write in Appendix 1 that if it was a micro unit, that it was up for discussion about that subsidy amount. It'll be in very interesting discussions.
Yep. But so we'll keep that up. I like that. I like when Paul added in the innovations in affordable housing, and I do want to try to keep that alive in our agenda and come up with ideas, because there are so many, to point out, there are so many people trying so many innovative things, from 3D printing to tiny houses to panel housing to all sorts of things. So I'd like to keep that in the conversation. And with that, let's see, one thing, events news. So I just do want to, again, bring in everyone's attention, a reminder about the Developers Forum on November 19th. And then the Lotstar partner event, I've heard it's going to be pushed into next year, is what I've heard. So I can maybe share some updates on it. I don't think a date's been set for next year, but I know it has been pushed off till next year. All right. With that public comment, we received one public comment from Kristen Molina Nauert, and I'll go ahead and read this. Some of the suggestions, such as increasing supply at the cost of affordability, 80-20-10, 100-10-10, are contradictory to the purpose of this commission. If you only focus on supply without an equity lens, just let unfettered capitalism do its work. With Asheville's ever-increasing popularity, the demand side cannot be met with slow construction supply in the next handful of years. If you encourage development for the sake of supply without the affordability guidelines, those units will go to folks with more resources, likely newcomers, rather than the people who are struggling now. Thank you, Zakiya Bell-Rogers, for naming the danger of loopholes and the difficulty of many of surviving in Asheville. I really appreciate Andy Barnett reframing that the 80-20-20 rule is with large rental complexes in mind, and that a more targeted approach that recognizes the different needs and opportunities of different types of developments, ADUs, duplexes, etc., makes sense. Similarly, thank you, Babs Phillip, for bringing that thread up explicitly. Appreciate Barry Bialik's idea of asking landlords, ADU owners directly what incentive would help them keep units affordable. Thanks. That was our public comment received. Do we have any other public comments or callers on the line?
We have no other callers.
Thank you. Do we know, were we live? Was YouTube up for the remainder of the meeting?
It skipped to some of our other streams for the next public meetings. Probably too complicated to explain, but we're going to attempt to cobble all of the videos back together, but it was all captured somehow, and we'll put it together after the fact.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Well, with that, it's 11:33. I'm going to move to adjourn. I want to thank everyone for attending. And again, big thank you to Paul and community development staff. Ciao.